order of business is a review of the minutes from August 12th, 2024. Did everyone receive the minutes? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 12th, 2024?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 12th, 2024.
Thank you, Adrian. Do we have a second?
I can second
Mike?
it. Oh.
Okay. Any discussion, corrections, disagreements? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of August 12th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstentions? So approved. We're going to switch the order.
I think we could do the, since Lauren is on, we can do the lottery and enrollment now.
Okay.
Since she's on, and then she can scoot out. Lauren, are you there?
I am.
Okay, did you want your slideshow put up? Do we have her slideshow? Or you're going to share it from your computer?
Yep, I can share it right from here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to have a review of the lottery and enrollment.
So as our student data manager, Lauren does handle many, many things, including the enrollment and the lottery process, and now she's even handling impact aid. So she's actually the administrator in charge of those things. So we're really happy and fortunate to have her overseeing things that need details, taken care of. So with that being said, you're going to give us an overview.
Yes. Just let me know if you can see what is it sharing? It's not coming up on the send. Hold on a second.
You're sharing your whole window, so if you just make your presentation full screen, you should be good.
All right, hold on a second. I'm gonna stop for a second before I click the right one.
Oh, there you go.
How's that? Are we
Yep.
there?
Yep,
Yeah?
All right, good. Just change that for you.
there you go.
All right. Is that clear from your?
Very
end?
clear. Yep,
Perfect.
thank you.
No problem. So this is really just an overview of where we're at right now as we quickly approach the beginning of school, and this will continue to change, but we just really wanted you to have an understanding of what enrollment is, the complexity of the process that takes place, and it's ongoing. So this is something that does not stop as after school begins. This is continual. We have students constantly coming in and going out. And so it really is like an ongoing process. It includes tracking more than one system, meaning we have, when we're looking at enrollment, we're looking at our intra-district and our inter-district. So who's moving, what movement is happening within the district, and what movement is happening outside of the district in relationship to Groton. As an example, like Grasso Tech, we have to track those kiddos that go there that live in Groton, because we're responsible for them to some extent. In addition to that, there are many times throughout the year when we are managing, our registration is managing more than one system. So we may be working in the 2023-2024 window and also the 24-25 window of students. So we begin opening up registration for the next school year in January of that current year. So she's manipulating and managing two separate systems at one time. So it's quite involved. And then to add the layer of the different variables that are included in that. So we have a lot of magnet seat movement, and we'll show you those numbers in a few minutes, including considerations that go into magnet seats, high mobility, and military seats that we have to take into account, including movement within the district. As you know, we're a highly mobile district with our military, but also our kiddos who may have difficulties with socioeconomics. So we do have a lot of students that move even within the district, not because it's military related, but because of housing situations. Another variable are the multiple programs that take place, those special programs. So the pre-K AM versus PM, which building, the ABA programs housed in Mystic River versus the Academy versus, so there's lots of special programming that takes place in the district that we also have to manage and stay on top of, including in our enrollment information. And then also another piece is the building and grade level capacity. So when enrollment reaches capacity based on the teacher contract and Board of Ed policy, we have to start looking at, okay, this building or this grade level has met capacity, what makes the most sense for where we could place them. So we look at a lot of different factors like where are they in location to the nearest school? Do they have any siblings that are currently attending any of the schools? What are the bus routes closest to them and where are those bus routes taking children? So there's a lot of like moving parts there as well. So quick at a glance. So far, just to give you an example of how this movement happens and what it looks like. During the 23-24 school year, we had 808 new or returning students. So new students registering. That does not include students that move from one school to another within the district. These are brand new students to Groton. It also includes returning students. So if students were, let's say, at the Friendship School or at Grosso Tech or one of the inter-district magnets and they return to us, that's included in these numbers as well. They have to go through a full registration process. So last year we had 108 new or returning students. That number that doesn't include incoming kindergarten. This year so far to date, as of Friday, we had 457 new and returning students. And again, that does include kindergarten. And in this case now transitional kindergarten as well. And last year we had 607 students transfer out of Groton Public Schools. So we had 808 come in the 23-24 school year, and we had 607 students transfer out. That does not include the students that graduated, so our seniors from this past year. That does not include that number.
But it does include, it's a full year of movement in and out, where 24-25, we've just gotten started.
Yeah.
So that
this
557.
24-25 will, yep, that number will continue to change.
Yep.
And right now, it's not, it's difficult to clearly identify the number of students who have transferred out. I'll have a better picture of that as we get closer to the end of the school year. So that's why I did not include that right now.
Lauren, do you know, out of the 607 that transferred out, how many out of that number transferred back in at some point in the school year?
Not off the top of my head, but I could probably figure that out.
Well, when you get it, just let us know.
Lauren, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is Jen White. So if we had like exiting students like 607 at the end of the school year and then transitioning in 457, would you say, would it be a fair assessment that it's a net 150 decrease in student population?
Yes and no. So that's to date. Keep in mind this
Yep,
number.
to date.
So we still have close to 200 students that are still in the process of being registered. We also have a vote we know will be probably coming in, I believe Miranda's last communication, who is our military liaison, said it would be probably mid-January at this point. Originally, it was supposed to come in sooner. And then we also have students who most likely will be trickling out through the military. So I don't know if that's a fair assessment to date. Sure, yeah.
Well, I would say, I'd actually say, though, that you're up 200 kids in that year alone. So you already got a plus 200. So it's really like a difference of 657, because you started with 808 and you lost 607. And now you've got 457 added on to that.
Yeah.
So it's really, we're still in the positive.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So we're
'Cause-
starting with 150 more than we started with last year. Is that a reasonable?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
I want to say it's pretty close to that. I do have the total enrollment.
See,
Let me get that for you. I do have that.
It's
But yeah, I think the
constantly
last time I
changing.
Yeah, no, it's
Throughout the
just,
year, but it's constantly changing.
the way I was viewing it, right, 2023, 24 new, that's like including our stable state already. So we know we have teachers to support that and everything. And then we assume like 607, like 600 kids left, right, to be replaced by a new 500. So that's why I'm thinking it's a decrease. I'm not taking all three numbers.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to think about what you're saying with that. So we had 808 new students register last year.
Last
We
year,
lost
correct, so
607.
that's now
That's
your
1 year.
new steady state, right? Because we were able to educate and absorb, and then, so at the end of the school year, 600 left, right? So now our steady state went down by 600, but then it increased by like 450. So our new steady state, like in my mind, is a decrease.
We lost other students as well, they graduated.
And that lost graduated. So I'm just trying to understand if we have capacity, you know, because we did lay some people off. It's just how I was like thinking.
I still think we're up, but
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that we have to keep an eye on it, for sure.
Yeah,
We're
still up.
relatively close. We are up to start enrollment for the 24-25 year. We're slightly up from last year at the same time, if that's what you're asking. The 808, those new returning students truly came right up till like the end of school.
Yeah,
last
so
year.
that
We
was a
had
full
some
year.
kids registering.
Not just the first 2 months.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And so in terms of our lottery, this was last year's lottery, and you have this information already. I just wanted you to have it as a reference to go back to later on. But really, I wanted to focus on this year's lottery and the updates that have occurred. So our window opened in February, beginning of February, and it closed in April. And when I say that window, the application window where families are allowed to go in, put into the lottery, submit their application for which school they'd like to attend, if it's outside of their attendance zone school. And this year, we had 167 applications for the lottery, and 101 of those were for kindergarten and transitional kindergarten. I thought this was important to include, and I thought it was interesting because the majority of our lottery system really does consist of the kindergarten and transitional kindergarten. And the reason I think this is important to note is because there is that interest, right? And so, to me, what this is saying is the kiddos who have previously participated in the lottery are really happy with their choice, and there's not a ton of movement there. There's some, but not a lot. Whereas there's this excitement around people who are new to the district and where they might want to have their kids go to school for the remainder of their elementary career, right? So when we look at that high kindergarten, transitional kindergarten number, that's telling us that the process is still very much viable, like people are really interested in exploring schools outside of their attendance zone. So of those 167 seats, applications, we were able to seat 81 students, meaning they were able to participate in the school of their choice, their first choice. We had 78 students that were waitlisted. And then we had a few that had ended up declining for various reasons. And so by school, this gives you a breakdown of how many seats we were able to actually offer and fill, and then how many students were waitlisted in each school.
And if seats become available, those people on the wait list, depending on where they all are, would get a call. I don't know how far into the year you do that, though, Lauren.
We don't do, once the school year begins, we really do not go into the wait list
Okay.
because we are of the mindset that, we want to build consistency. It's a disruption in learning. Once you have a child who's gotten into school and really has become part of the routine and learned the systems, it's not in their best interest to be plucking kids out mid-year. So really, once school begins, but we were even having conversations today about possibly opening up one or two more seats in one or two of the schools. So, I mean, it's an ongoing thing right up till the beginning of school. And you can see that certain schools, we're able to seat more students because of the flexibility there and the enrollment numbers at the beginning of the year, or over the summer. And then there's other schools we're not really able to open as many seats. As an example, Thames River, we just, with the numbers that were in play, and based on the intent to return forms that are sent out in, I want to say about March, we send out those intent to return forms. And basically it's saying, hey, parents, what are your intentions for next year? Because of that military component especially, like who is planning to continue in this school? Who has, already found out new orders? Things to that nature, or maybe planning to move to a different location outside of Groton. So we really rely heavily on that as well. We do weekly enrollment reports, so we pay attention. There's a lot of factors that go into how many seats we open in each building, and then how many we open as time goes on.
Dean?
Yeah, thanks. I want to see how the numbers jibe, if they do. So total submissions are 167, so you've got seated and waitlisted. So that's 8 kids short. What happened to the other 8 kids, other 8 submissions?
So there are some students who may have either declined the seat after they were seated. They may have ended up moving out of district unknowingly. So they're not, the numbers will never fully jive from what you're seeing on this end, but this is like a gist of, this is how it played out, how it should play out.
The other question I have is the total number of seats are seated by school adds up to 81, but the wait list adds up to 113.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, so the seated by school, when you add them all up, comes to the 81. It matches the seated number. But the wait list comes to 113.
You're not, so because, okay, so again, you can't look at, just because the total submission is 167, we did not open enough seats. We didn't open up the seats to match that 167. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so in other words, you've got a total number of waitlisted of 113. So waitlisted plus the seated comes to 184. I'm sorry, 194. So we've got, between the seated and the waitlisted, you've got 194, which exceeds the submissions of 167. So you're saying, so are you counting people as waitlisted who haven't submitted anything, haven't submitted an application?
No, so I apologize for not making this clear. So when we look at those wait lists, there are some families, so you have 2 options. You have up to 2 choices of schools you'd like to attend. So some of the students the wait list that you see at the school may not completely jive with the numbers on the other side, because they may be waitlisted at more than one school. So maybe they're waitlisted at Catherine Kanowski, but they're also waitlisted at Barnum because they didn't get either of their choices. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. So there may be some people who are waitlisted twice and 3 times.
Yeah.
And that would account for the overage.
Yep.
Lauren,
And I just made that clear, I apologize.
Lauren, the families that are waitlisted, they know that when the school year starts, they will not be placed, and there's,
Yes.
okay.
They've made all contact and communication. That department does a really nice job calling parents and meeting with them if they need to.
Okay. Jen?
Just a quick question. So like what's presented on screen was different than what we received. I'm just going to go to Thames River, right? Like, so in what was originally submitted to us was that 24 students were seated, and right now you're saying only 8 students are seated. Is it, what?
That's on the 23-24, Jen. You're-
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, she just had,
Thank you.
and we knew that was confusing, but we wanted to kind of show you what happened last year versus this year.
Thank you. 'Cause
That's
I
all
was
right.
like, what happened to those
No,
kids?
I know. It's a year difference.
And so on to the next pretty exciting thing that's happening in Groton Public Schools, the transitional kindergarten. I think it's worth noting that we have received quite a bit of media coverage about our transitional K program, especially given the fact that the Connecticut General Assembly has raised the minimum age of students who are automatically enrolled in kindergarten. So you have to turn 5 either on or before September 1. And so we have all those what we call our birthdays, right? So anyone after September 2nd or after, all the way up to December 31st, last year, they were part of our group. They were part of our kindergarten cohort, and that no longer is the case. And so we really look at this opportunity to work with our families. We heard their calls, to be honest with you. We heard their concerns with, minimal time to prepare for this change. And our teachers who have been saying for such a long time, they saw what was needed, and that was that transitional kindergarten class. So that one that existed at Thames River, we were able to expand. And so now we offer transitional kindergarten in the short term at least in 4 schools, which is amazing. So our transitional kindergarten programs are at CK, Thames River as it always was, Mystic River, and NEA. We did not include the transitional kindergarten program at Charles Barnum simply because the number of qualifying kindergarten students far exceeded the number of students in need of transitional kindergarten, and like it was a space issue. And so we were able to make those adjustments, and we gave them the option of what school they would like to attend their transitional kindergarten program at. And so we really worked with families to help them figure that out. And I mean, right up to today, I'm still talking with families about how to meet their needs with this. But the response has been really positive about this transitional kindergarten program. In the process for how we did this, we started providing screening opportunities for all incoming kindergarten and or transitional kindergarten students back in February, and we included all those kids, so those birth babies and those kids who were automatically qualified. And we did this for a reason. We did this because, as we've all talked about, right, one of our major focuses is ensuring equity, right, across our district and giving everybody what they need. And so some kids that are within that birth baby time frame are ready for kindergarten, and we need to acknowledge that. And then some are not. And so by screening them, we can get a true sense of who really is developmentally appropriate to be placed in kindergarten and who really is in need of that transitional kindergarten program. And we wanted to eliminate any barriers like people who may not be savvy and keeping up with what's happening in the news and the legislation and all of that. We wanted everybody to be on an equal playing field, so we screened all students and then placed them accordingly. Which something we were very proud of. And that was really the news has gravitated towards that, so we've made some really positive, had some positive exposure on the media outlets, and they're really leaning on us to lead this across the state. And again, it was in response and working with families to just proactively register and screen kids so that we knew about where we were at. And how to balance those numbers. And so with that said, here's our current enrollment as of August 15th. So you see CK, here's the enrollment at each of the schools, and here's our transitional kindergarten enrollment. Notice that NA for Charles Barnum, obviously, like I mentioned, we took those students, we worked with those families, and we placed them in other transitional kindergarten programs across the district where it was available. But our numbers are, and we continue to register more kiddos, and these transitional kindergarten classes are still creeping up some, but we've got most of our classes filled already for transitional K.
Well, and that's why the state does not collect data till October 1st. We've also talked about what is the best time to collect data for impact aid, where we're going to have the most military students. So we're going to be talking to Miranda, we're going to set up a meeting just to see, because it can change every year.
Yeah.
But we have to let impact aid office know, to get the numbers. So we've always done it by October 1, it just makes sense with the power school and everything. But we have had conversations about, is this the best time this year, so.
Lauren, with the new state law about the age 5, when you're doing the screening, if a student, if a young person is developmentally ready for kindergarten, do we have any exceptions to the rule? Or
We do, which is truly the best part of this. So we had about, I want to say there were, don't quote me, I believe there were 11 students that qualified, although their birthdays range from September, I think September 16th might have been the earliest child who was accepted early into kindergarten, all the way to the end of December. There were, I want to say there were 11 students, and after conversations with their parents, and we did call and speak to each one of those families, there were 4, I believe, that actually opted to stay in transitional K. And again, that was a personal choice, and we really gave them the pros and cons both ways, made it clear that it is their decision, and some thanked us for making sure that their child was placed appropriately and moving them ahead, even though their birthday didn't necessarily jive with the new legislation. And just the opposite, thank you for doing this, but I think I'm going to put my child in transitional K. I think it'd be able to experience those strengthened, those early learning standards.
And I know at least one, we reassessed per the parent's request, because she felt he was a little shy coming in, and so we said, well, let's give him a couple more months, and we'll have another screening. So we invited him back, and I think he did much better and was ready. So that can also happen with little ones,
So it's interesting, all the students that have been screened and talking about the hundreds, only 2 families contested the decision, and through conversation, one we reassessed because it was a situation that, it was more the child being nervous, anxious, all of that. So we made it the appropriate period of time, and we reassessed him, and he did in fact qualify for early acceptance into kindergarten. The other student, same, we didn't have to assess them, but she was so close in some areas and over the criteria in other areas that after a lengthy conversation with the family and going back amongst the committee, we decided that was in fact appropriate to move this child to early kindergarten entrance.
When we met with the parents,
Those were the only 2 families that felt that the screening didn't necessarily correspond or correlate with what their child was able to do.
and we have a comprehensive screening that we've used since we've started TK and even kindergarten screening, using the Brigance, which is a standardized assessment, but we use other things too, in addition. But I did say, when we met with the parents, and we had over 100 parents come out to Thames River back in the winter, I did say this is for this year because of this transition, and we would have to assess and look at what's in the future. And I actually have talked to the commissioner of that, and will continue to see if there's going to be any thoughts about expanding a pre-K experience or any early childhood to make it more of a universal approach that with funding, instead of being an unfunded mandate, with support and funding. Because this, feel like this cohort is going to really do some awesome things, having these experiences. I'd love to see it continue.
And I'm looking forward to tracking this particular cohort
Yeah.
over the next 8 to 10 years, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to seeing the results and ideally prove what we are anticipating, which is they have a stronger foundation and they experience more success
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. Yeah. Jen?
Just a quick question. So like the kids that Charles Barnum, they get to pick which of the other elementary schools. Do they, can they continue at those elementary schools at kindergarten, or are they going to return back to Charles Barnum?
That's a great question, actually. So when we spoke to each family, we did let them know that this was a one-year placement, and that if they fell in love with the school that they chose, they certainly had the option to enter into the lottery to keep their child there. Especially considering they would go into kindergarten from transitional K, so it would be a natural next step, whether they transition back to their intent to Charles Barnum, or they are able to get into the lottery, into a seat through the lottery. We also do the same thing with our pre-K programs, and considering transitional K is not quite kindergarten, but it's a little bit higher level than pre-K, it makes sense to continue with the same process, in terms of how to place them. So it is a one-year placement at that school with the option of entering the lottery.
Thank you.
Ian?
Thank you. This is only kind of tangentially related, but I'm curious to know where we are in the process of developing a what I've referred to as the transplant map. As far as looking at getting some data on what students are attending school outside of their attendance zone, and what schools they're attending and what schools would be within their natural attendance zone.
How you doing with that?
So, go ahead, Lauren. Well, we both met with the people.
I believe that had become the budget.
It did. But we also thought it was so close to the end of the year, we were more curious about what was coming up. So we will reach back out to them to see what the time frame could be, how much it would cost us. And, because it is something very interesting, Ian, I'm really excited to be able to delve there. And I think it's going to give us really good information to showcase, but at that point, it was so late in the year, and we were just really being very efficient to get through this year, the last year, so.
So what do you think, like 2 months from now, 3 months from
Yeah,
now?
Lauren and I can actually outreach, in the next month or so to find out. You know, you have the contact, don't you, Lauren? Yeah, so.
In the next 2 or 3 months, hopefully.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, anytime. Adrian, did you have anything?
Yeah, hi, Lauren. This is Adrian. I was just wondering if there's a maximum class size for TK.
Yeah, it's 20 students, and that's pushing it. Ideally, we want to keep it right at 18, but 20 is the maximum. So we'll close them out.
I have a question. This is Mike. I've got a question on the Groton Middle School and Fitch High School enrollments. I see the Groton Middle School is 934, and Fitch High School is higher at 992, but it's 4 grades. So if I divide Groton Middle School by 3, I get 311 on average per class. And for Fitch High School, if I divide that by 4, I get 248, which is quite a bit smaller. I recognize that some people go to other high schools, but that probably doesn't account for all of it. I guess what I'm asking, are we looking ahead to seeing more students per class come into Fitch as the years go on? Because the class size is a bit bigger in the middle school.
I think the middle and high school, I really need to see our greatest visits into some of those other inter-district magnets. That number I'm anticipating will continue to rise over the next few weeks, to be honest.
We usually have at least 1,000, 1,100, and the projection is closer to 1,000 for this year, so we probably will see more kids join. But you're right, if you look at even 6th grade is close to 300, it's 297 that currently. 7th grade is 300, eighth grade is 304, but we do lose a few eighth graders every year. We, to Grasso, to Marine Science, and to New London.
But that'd be about 20% of them lost, which seems high to me. 1 out of 5. Is that?
We've talked about doing some things differently for the eighth graders to see Fitch earlier on and to do some of the career pathways and visits. That really was something that Matt Brown started, and I think wants to continue, but maybe even backing it up earlier, before the other schools showcase theirs.
Okay. And the other thing I did, oh, sorry.
I do think it is important, so during our October 1 snapshot from last year, Groton Middle School had 898 students, and we are currently at 934 projected students for Groton Middle. So we have some pretty significant gains at this point, and I think we're still going to continue to gain some more students there as well. Fitch High School last year, the October 1 snapshot, which is a state snapshot of our enrollment, was 1,019. So we're not too far off there. But again, I still see us gaining more students at the high school as well.
And so that the middle school, the feedback is that, for state reasons, it was built quite small for what we needed. And so if there's even more students in there, is that a space issue, class size issue?
Those class sizes in the middle school have always met the board's, max number, which is like 20 to 24, 25. So they've always really filled their classrooms. They aren't really small classrooms, so.
But it's going up.
And now it's going up, yeah.
So I'm concerned about that. And then this I just took all the other Thames River, Northeast, Mystic River, Charles Barnum, Catherine K, added those up, and then divided by 6 for kindergarten through 5th grade, and got 357 on average. So are even the younger, basically what I'm asking is, are we watching higher student population per grade or higher cohort move through the system? And it seems like if that's true, then we'll have even more pressure at Groton Middle School, and that'll kind of come up over time to Fitch.
So I could say yes and no. I would say with the expansion of EB and new submarine coming in, an additional submarine coming in, that we might see that, but many of the submariners are here for sub-school or in the beginning, so you see a lot more of the younger children coming in, and then because of attrition and because of the options that they have in high school, you see that class size getting, smaller.
Adrian?
My question was to kind of take off what Mike was saying with the middle school and what seems like
Just for your reference, as I'm looking back to October 1 of last year for the elementary schools. Currently, we have 2 schools that are over where they were on October 1 of last year, and the rest are down. When I look at the numbers, and I can do an exact for you if you'd like, but it looks like it's balancing out, where it's about the number over versus number under is actually balancing out for total enrollment at the elementary level, but I can do an exact number for you if you'd like.
It's going to give us same date, and I think it's going to be a little easier to look at, but it's a good idea. Yeah.
Lauren, can you send us last year's numbers for enrollment, especially for the new board members?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I'm glad we were able to rearrange this for you.
Yeah, a wonderful job.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you. Have a good one.
appreciate it.
You too.
It's perfect timing. I see that Attorney Dugas has joined us. So at this point, I'm going to entertain a motion to go into executive session for an attorney opinion update from the board attorney with regard to impact aid, inviting Superintendent Austin and Finance Director Engel. Do we hear a second? Seconded by Jen.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just 2 points. One, your description of our reasons for executive session was detailed enough, but in the agenda, it really wasn't, so next time we have the agenda.
And we checked with FOI on that, and it obviously should be perfect in the agenda. However, it is completely legal to announce it before the meeting as long as it's articulated properly and actually could be added on to.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but we did check with attorneys and FOI on all that.
Good.
And who seconded? I just want to write this down.
Jen.
Jen.
Yeah.
And then my other point is, if this is still on is this on the impact aid opinion that we've made public at this point? So I don't see how that's a protected legal document. I'm not going to belabor this point, but I'll vote against going into an executive session.
So at this point, all in favor of going into executive session, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
You say his name out loud, so.
Okay, Thomas abstains. Okay, and Whitney opposes.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to executive.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so we are out of executive session at 7:42 PM. And our next agenda item is the Ad hoc Budget Procedure Committee update. Ian, did you have a presentation you wanted to make, and then we can entertain questions?
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to pull up the timeline document.
Thank you.
There wasn't a decision package, but there's an active decision package, so I'm not sure if we're going to access it now. But we can discuss it. I have it on home. If you have questions or suggestions.
What does it say?
Caucus.
August.
I'm sharing the timeline, version 23. Can everyone see that on the screen?
I can't see it.
Andrea's having a little difficulty. I don't know if you can magnify it a bit. How's that?
Any better?
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so as I mentioned last week, this is basically just, some of it's just informative, some of it is descriptive. This is a draft that the committee voted to bring forward to the CAL and receive comments and, make notes on. But the idea is trying to get the draft budget in play a little bit earlier, and then that would be one major change. And then the other major change would be borrowing a model from the town council RTM as far as having one continuous CAL meeting. That's the budget review session that will be opened up and then recessed periodically along with the schedule. And then closing it, just giving a little bit earlier in February. And then vote on it with a good buffer time to produce the documents to get them around everybody. So So I would just open invitation to my fellow committee members, invite Mike Whitney to jump in as you see fit, to help add color to the conversation. A lot of this, is a highly collaborative process. We took, a lot of notes. There's not a hard filter on what made into this document. Basically, we just only try not to have contradictory notes. So some of the stuff, the FYE closeout and the audit, that's just more timeline or more informational, so that the board is aware of what's happening in the finance department at the same time that the budget's going to be prepared. So, and also we did add a monthly report. We, again, it is the consensus of the committee that, we definitely, and also, based on a lot of comments coming from the whole body over the past many months, that having a more detailed monthly report, more clearly expressed, I guess, some of what we're receiving now, what rating, where we see clearly the expenditure encompasses, and having some projections in there as well. Like I said, everyone received this document last week. We had a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure I was taking a deep dive into it, but I'd rather just kind of do this more reactively than proactively at this point. So I would just entertain, comments, questions, concerns from the full body, and also any further public commentary from my fellow committee members.
Mike?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Since we met, I found last year's, I think Lori Lapine provided this for last year's BOE schedule. And so I was comparing that, and actually it's very similar right up until, I think basically if you just scroll down to December. So at that point where we've got BOE members receive and review the superintendent's budget, and I think that's something that Jen pointed out would give us more time to get an early look at it. In last year's timeline, I'm not sure if it was followed or not, but it's listed that it would first go to the finance committee basically at that same time. So it looks like what we're saying is it can go to the finance committee too, but just provide it to everyone at that same early December time frame.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's a good point. Thanks for getting your hands on the document. So yeah, it's not like, there's not a lot of major earth-shaking changes here. There's a couple of small adjustments. Any other comments or questions?
Susan, it's probably going to impact you and your staff, right? Because we're asking for it to be at the end of November, so to give us more time. I know we, half of us started in December, and the presentation probably deviated from prior periods, right? So what we experienced wasn't the norm, but unfortunately, that's all we have to judge it by, because what we received in December wasn't like a full packet, and I understand why it was done that way, right? But the expectation is, it looks like the work was being done anyway, so let's get a full package that the board can review, chomp on, and so by the time we get to January, right, we can, as the meetings progress, we could take line item or 3 or 4 line items at a time within chunks within the budget so that we can have a full review process rather than sort of like going all over the place. So that we're like, the premise is if we know that salaries, we know like the percent increases that are going to take place because it's negotiated by contract, we don't even talk about that, right? Because we know, hey, we're supposed to increase by 3% or 4%. That's off the table. Then we start talking about like all the other large item chunks, like utilities, transportation, things that we can sort of control. And then we start reviewing that way. So by the end of January, February, us as a board have reviewed all of the line items, and we can close off and vote on it to make it the board budget, so that we are not faced in the same situation as last year or this year, where Dave must have been like typing in the numbers and we're printing and presenting at the same time. Totally want to avoid that. There is a comment maybe in the February section where we would be done maybe a week or 2 weeks prior to the presentation, so that this committee will feel, this board will feel comfortable with what's being presented. And then when faced with questions, since we've pretty much reviewed it the entire month of January in big chunks, we all know what's in there. And so that's all of the changes or suggestions we've made. We know there was a calendar already in place, but what we have recommending is a calendar, but the calendar is going to sort of like guide us to what chunks of the budgets we're reviewing, so that when we come in, we all know that we're going to be talking about utilities this night and only utilities. And if we only meet for an hour because utilities was, something simple, then we get to leave. And then the following week, whatever the other topics may be. Mike, if I'm misstating anything, feel free to jump in. Or Ian as well.
I think the most important thing is to get a new finance director. That's really important. We've had 3 in really 12 months. And so it's taken, that length of time for people to kind of get used to. So, my hope is that through your good work that you guys have already done, we'll have somebody named in the next week or so and, have them ready to go. We do zero budgeting, which means that we go to every department here at central office, we go to all the principals, and we look at the budget in its entirety and look at areas where they can either reduce or they need more. So we do it each year kind of as a fresh start. Not that they change that much, but they look at their actuals and look and forecast in the future. So that's important work, and especially if we have a new director of finance, they're going to be getting to know people at the same time. So, that work will have to happen. And, we definitely want to give you a whole book, but I tell you, it's really been an enormous undertaking, even with Ken being here 5 years in a row, to get it published before Christmas. It takes a lot of effort. Now, one of the things we might be able to do is get you something, digitally, but the hard copy, even when they print the first version of the book, it takes that office, quite a bit of time to publish it. So I'm just saying that it might be doable, but I've got to get someone in the lead there, and we've got to, make sure that they're up to speed with the way things are done here. And Ray has offered to help support that transition, which will be good.
So I'm going to recognize Dean and then Andrea.
And I know Adrian, I think I got it.
Oh, there he is. Oh, I didn't see.
All right. So as important as the budget review process is to me, is the structure, the chart of accounts, if you will. Is it sufficiently granular? Are things properly categorized? So we're looking at things. And we've seen this in a couple of different areas. Hey, how come this was moved over here? This number went down, that number went up. When you transition from one to another, even if you make minor adjustments, you're going to have that happen. I've seen that in other, even non-public budgets. People say, well, how come this number changed? Well, because we've actually shifted. This is not being categorized. We put the telephones in with utilities, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, but overall, is the structure that we have, the coding that we have, is that, for lack of a better phrase, up to snuff? Is there a standard we're supposed to meet under GAAP or somebody else's, some other standards? You know, because I remember years back, there have been complaints from the town side that the board budget was not sufficiently detailed, that lots of things were lumped together into broad categories, and they, well, you know, here's the Board of Ed budget, you know, take it or leave it kind of thing, with like 5 line items. That, yeah, I'm exaggerating a little bit, yeah. But so over the years, there's been more and more and more detail. So do we have sufficient detail?
And I would think that Ray would be the one to chime in on the
Yeah.
policies that govern the chart of accounts.
The chart of accounts do meet state regulations. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to upload them into the EFS. It meets all state and federal regulations. Now, could they be simplified? Possible. Could they be worse? Possible. So, I mean, there's always room for improvement regardless of what district you go to, what district you work. So in terms of recategorizing some items, I may look at, for example, your telephones and I'll move to utilities. But then again, I may lose e-rate programs associated with them. So there's certain things that, if it's been a certain way for 20 years, I'm not going to touch it. But if I look at something and it's been moved back and forth, I'm going to use my judgment to say it should probably be in category 1 or 2. Okay, based on the object codes. But we do try to break it out by organization, by object code. In that order. And that's the order that gets uploaded into the state financial system. So,
All right, so you'd be satisfied from your experience that the setup we have is more or less, except for, you know, personal taste, for example, where you might put one line item or the other. The way it's structured right now would not really require a major overhaul of any sort. It's sufficiently granular for us to be able to do our job to review the budget.
once it's established properly, I would say yes.
Okay.
In other words, if I extract it and put it in a format that's usable, then I would say yes, we could do it. You'd be able to understand. Now, I'm thinking of a few things off the top of my head, but some of these formats are not down and dirty, it could be easy.
Yeah.
So careful what's being asked in a hurry.
I'm only trying to nail that one down. If we're happy with that, then that's what we build on. So I'm open to, you know, being neutral on the thing, too.
The same object codes would be used in any operating system because they match to the state.
Right.
Okay, in other words, 610 is a supply, 330 is a service. So those all relate to the state content. And it's how we create the organization code that's related to those object codes that upload into the town.
All right, so I'm going to recognize Andrea, then Adrian, and then Ian.
I think Susan alluded to this, and my question really is for you, Susan, and that is, given the upping of dates, what are the implications for overtime?
Well, I guess there could be, you know, overtime with that. My concern is that I have a fully established office. We have a couple retirements coming in. I can't say more than that. So there will be, with the new finance director, also new people. So that wisdom for years will be going away. So I am going to have to really support that organization before we do any other added things. So I will just let you know, and I'll try to do my very best, but I understand the idea of having it in a whole piece, even if I can get it to you digitally first, you know, to look at.
Let me clarify. So that means, I may have the wrong term, it might not be overtime, but are there implications for an increase in spending?
There could be. I mean, there could be. I don't know if I can predict that at this point.
Okay.
But there, time definitely, and then also supporting them with professional learning, because we've got this upgrade happening that needs to happen with the software, so, yeah.
We always got the budget in one piece. I think last year was a
Yeah.
fluke.
Yeah.
I mean, all my 20 prior years,
Yeah.
the budget always came in one piece. It never came piece.
Well, and we tried to do it by schools, and I still want to do the schools, because I think it's really important to see the schools, how they add up to the whole piece, but I don't think we're going to lay it out like that. We just knew we had a new board, so, and that was Dave's way of his making sense of it, so hopefully we'll have someone, and Ray will help them, so that they understand it better, yeah.
We're back to
Believe it
the
or
one.
not, that's how I've done 7 budgets now, by organization, and I pull it all together. I do, Dave's way is one way of doing it, I'm not, and I have to take a good deep dive and see how I can do it.
So I'll recognize Adrian, then Ian, and then Mike.
Yeah, I guess in my end, the full budget we're talking about to receive in December, it would be nice if it was attempted to have a full budget, but if there's any omissions from that full budget, if they're clearly spelled out in what we get, so like healthcare, we didn't have those numbers until later in January, and that's acceptable. So going forward, we'll know exactly what we have and we'll know what we don't have. That, from my understanding, I would rather be able to sit down and try. It takes a long time to understand the budget before you can even ask questions.
Just an FYI for everybody's application, there's 2 key components that normally we don't get until right around budget approval time, believe it or not. That is your healthcare number and your fuel, your diesel and your heating. I mean, those numbers, we normally try to hold off. Sometimes you get it. If there's a good bargain out there on the consortium, we'll be able to hold good numbers for the heating, the fuel oil, the diesel. Sometimes in January, February. This year, we didn't get them until late May or late June. But we've got much better pricing because all of a sudden the price dropped on the per barrel on the market, so the future. So those are 2 key components along with the utilities. Everybody's feeling utilities now. So those 3 areas are top 2 projected by the university.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that we could just put a rough estimate, and then say, all right, well, we'll come back to this on February 1st with better numbers once we can nail them down. But at least then we know what we're starting with and that it's variable or that it's a fixed number. If we don't, because, I mean, staffing and some of that stuff, maybe we'll know that those are going to be pretty hard numbers where some of them just aren't going to be as concrete. So I guess just clear identification of what we have and what we don't have. And then my second, what I would like to see would be when we make changes to the budget in work sessions, it was really hard to tell for me where that we would add something or subtract, so we subtracted a position, what line item in the actual budget, where was that? So I would like to see if there's changes made in budget work sessions, that that's followed up by an addendum to that original superintendent budget, so that before we get the board's budget, we can have a superintendent's budget and a stack of addendums, so we can actually trace what has changed.
Instead of just
We do
lists.
that on RTM.
Correct.
We do that on, when I was on the RTM, and Mike can attest to it, we did that. Whenever a committee made a change, or we had a sheet, that the town council had this, but the RTM approved this. Yeah.
And then the
That's a good
change would
suggestion.
be, whatever, program that we, added or deleted, and then it would say, this page in the budget, this line item in the budget, and then that number is going to change. So just a way so we can understand how these budget work sessions are going.
And then we can go back to when we get our budget, that those changes were actually made.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to see, I would like to see that improve too, because it was very hard to follow.
Trying to model our budget deliberation sessions after the town council and the RTM, how they do it. Because it is very easily tracked on that side. As far as how they go through the object codes as a function when we need them, you know, and when there's a vote on moving a number, it's very clear which number is being moved. And then you see that reflected in one of the addendum sheets that's given out. You know, like the RTM got a whole series of addendum sheets as far as like, you know, what the town manager's budget was and then, you know, what became the town council budget. And, you know, that's the goal with the whole, like, you know, continuous count session. And also like having a more structured approach. And so this is going to cross over into the policy and procedures draft document and also the table of contents draft document. Neither of which are really quite ready for presentation yet, but we're getting there. Those are the next few that are up. But, you know, the idea is having, you know, a well-articulated process and having also, you know, a way of like keeping track. And also when it comes down to the final vote, making sure that, you know, if there's been a couple of different versions of the final number, that all those versions are available to move back and forth, depending on you know, the will of the body on the layout. You know, one of the larger frustrations last year was that, you know, we had no option to go back to a prior number. And that's something that I know I, for one, definitely do not want to see repeated. So that's going to be more policy. That's kind of like along the line. So where the community's been going. But yeah, so as far as like the timeline goes, yeah, I'd be eager to see, you know, the new finance director's, you know, reaction to the idea, but, you know, at the end of the day, like, the Board of Ed should have, a process that can exist beyond any given board, any individual board member, and any individual administration. You know, if it's a well-articulated process, and then it should be kind of carried through. So, I just wanted to share those thoughts. The question for Ray, in regards to the healthcare numbers and fuel oil numbers, again, back to Adrian's point, I think one of the things that we're looking at as a committee with Ray, if you look at the second bullet point on October, advanced previous year's budget draft, as a draft, with notes of the no changes for the year. So that'd be one way we can kind of get everyone in the loop. As Susan mentioned, you know, yeah, going through state budgets, going through that, you know, starting with blank state's one thing, but as she noted, you tend to kind of end up in the same general vicinity. So one of the things we thought could help fast track the process is one, advancing every fixed number that's for sure, like salaries, benefits, that sort of thing. And then advancing basically last year's, the previous year's budget as a draft. And then, you know, with a categorization of like, okay, that's the fixed cost, that's the fixed cost, that's the fixed cost. And then making a note on what's not fixed and what might be adjusted and what will likely be the recommended adjustment. Whether it's just like a ballpark figure, like 2 to 5% more here, 2 to 5% less here, something like that. That's something to kind of get us, you know, looking at the same areas that the superintendent. That'd be one way to kind of expedite the process, I think, as far as like getting something to the table. As far as like healthcare and fuel oil, in other districts, is there some way to shift our budgeting schedule or to try to get those lined up better to better suit our budget deliberations so they don't come in at the last minute?
The problem we have with healthcare, they predicate next year's rates on your expenditure. So, on the healthcare line, it's normal for them to come in because in the beginning of the year, they don't have much of experience. Rating ratios aren't really good, particularly if you've got a high number of incidents. for lack of better terms, so the planes are up there, and they're very expensive, so they're gonna, previously, my last two budgets that I come in with, the first, in November, December timeframe, I've been given 15-18% price increases on my healthcare. By the time, February, March, somewhere in that timeframe, by the time it hits that time, we're down to as low as 6%, as high as 9 or 10%. So, I mean, it's a moving target based on experience, experience. Fuel oil, again, it depends on what the price of oil futures are at the time. So if we go out to bid in December, oil futures are $100 a barrel, you're going to pay the nose. If they drop all of a sudden in March, and I've already locked in a $100 a barrel, they drop down to $60 a barrel, I can't get that price. I'm done. So I normally try to hold off. I'll put a placeholder in there, say it's $70 or $80, or I'll lock in or budget a 5% increase over last year's. Or if I hear something in the market that it's going, the market is running 15%, I'll even use that number. So it's whatever. You gotta remember, we belong to, I belong to what they call CASBO, similar to Capture Pay, and we all compare notes, and we all work together out there. One organization, I actually purchased my oil locally, because I didn't have to pay any storage fees. And I was getting the same price I was getting from the large distributors. So, again, it depends on the negotiations.
Got it, yeah. All right, that makes sense. So yeah, I guess it comes down to the method of estimating, so maybe a different way we could do it. So like last year, our health insurance number was just a zero placeholder, which, you know, we probably could have done better to have a more approximate number, so that
We
we
would probably hold at least 10 or 15% as a whole.
Right, yeah. So, you know, we did look at something like that. And similar with the fuel oil, where the healthy estimate, and maybe you're rounding up, so that worst case, it's actually, we do a little bit better than anticipated.
That's what happened.
Yeah, so, and then that's where the not much funds can come in, it'd be health working buffer for places where we need our own.
The other good thing is on that is you have issues like hot water heating or oil or something like that. Now,
Exactly.
Right.
Right, we have a contingency fund. Right, so, just to circle back, talk about site budget versus operational overview type budget, presentation. Again, the document's not quite where we want it yet for, presentation to the whole committee, but, when we were looking at the table of contents, we were actually looking at trying to arrange the budget format to be basically both. So that there'd be one section of the budget that's going to have from a big operational overview perspective, and then there'd be a section that's by site budget, where here would be object codes and content codes of the operational budget. What would you think of that?
Is that pointed to me or?
Yeah, sorry, I said, yeah, I think I paid out there, and, Ray, I was, I think what you think of that approach, having a sort of dual, sort of like half the budget would be presented, one part, the budget would be presented from two different perspectives. We'll only get the overall operational, the big picture, the wide screen, and then the other would be site by site. So volume one, volume two.
We do it in two parts. We do it in two parts. We have the object code, and then we do have it by site, I believe, right, Ray?
Yes, I'm looking at, I really have to look at the format formally at this point. I skimmed through the budget book itself, and it does look at, we've got both formats in there.
It's just a little hard to discern as we went through the budget, what exactly, you know, really, again, back to Adrian's point about how the voting was and the numbers. we're just going to different ways to arrange it. So yeah, it sounds like we're all on the same page. It's maybe the actual format in the accent of the level of detail. But we'll take a look at the next year's budget. We'll take a look at that. And the chart of accounts, was a good conversation, because I appreciate that, Dean, bringing that up. So that's about all I really wanted to present, but I'll throw back my committee members, Mike and Dan, anything else you want to say? Anything?
I know Mike had his hand raised a while ago. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just have two things. One's about the December part, and one's about the budget work sessions. So it seems like a lot of us would like to see, and it seems doable, to get the budget in some reasonably complete form in December. And that's similar to what the timeline was last year. And here's my question for the December part. That had it going to the Finance Committee. Is that something that's traditionally done? Does the Finance Committee need to take a first look at things? That's my first question.
My opinion on that is, why bother? The Finance Committee doesn't really represent, all due respect to the member of the Finance Committee, and you're still here, right? I don't think represents a body with special expert knowledge on the budget. In other words, there's some level of pre-digestion that we can offer to make things easier for the other 6 members of the board. There are only 9 of us. We only have so much time. And the 9 are going to go, so in other words, just present the budget to the board. I would skip the step of going to the Finance Committee, because the budget is something for all of us to consider. As much as I'd love a accrete power, there really isn't anything there. There's nothing wrong. Like I said, because we're just a body of 9 people, it's not like the RTM, for example, where there is a lot of value to your subcommittees, because the rest of the body really is relying on the expertise of the Education Committee or the whatever committee. But it's not quite the case here. I mean, I know there are 9 of us, and we have different levels of, attunement to numbers. We're not all on the same level, but again, I don't think the Finance Committee represents a special level of expertise where we offer value. In other words, the budget would come to us, and somehow it comes out in a better, more understandable form for the rest of you. It's not like the Finance Committee can make some presentation that Ray or another business manager, couldn't make.
Well, we actually, as a Finance Committee, we don't have enough time to go through the whole budget book anyway.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
What was the point? I don't think in my prior years, the Finance Committee ever went through the budget. The whole committee, we always did as a board, never as a committee.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like giving it to the whole board, December, sounds good.
Yeah.
And then my comment on the budget work sessions, I like the idea, it's been put forward to have it as continuous CAL, and that's much more similar to having what the town council does, and the RTM has their budget session that goes into recess, and you can even have a regular meeting amidst that and reconvene it later.
I don't know when you all changed that, because the board always, when I was on it, from 1993 to 2013, we always went into recess. Yep, we never adjourned. And when I first got on the board...
Not since I've been here, since 2014. It was always this way.
When I got on the board, I said to Kim, don't you recess? And remember Rita said, oh, yeah, because when Beverly was on the board before, we did a recess. I don't know why they adjourned.
Well, we've had to change, when we did it in the compartments, we've often had to change where we end up and say we need to move that to the next. So it does make sense that you would do it as a continuous loop.
Yeah, I'd like to know exactly what value that adds to the whole process. We can't discuss it tonight, but I'd love to know why that makes it so much better. So I look forward to hearing more about it.
What, the recess?
Yeah, so versus just, because the meeting begins and the meeting ends.
Yeah, but
the technicality of
about
it.
the budget.
Yeah.
So you're not really ending until you get to the final.
We never really end.
I think the only thing for me is to get the right staff at the table.
We never really end.
You know what I mean?
We go on ad infinitum, ad nauseum.
And so those budget work sessions last year, and at every level of government, it is where you do have certain topics that you're planning on dealing with that night, and so that you can get the right people there. And so we'd maintain that. But I'd like to, whether it's budget session, work session as is, or a continuing CAL, I think it's really important, this is my feeling, that we vote on chunks of the budget as it comes through. Like, it's presented in logical, seems like logical chunks, but vote on the numbers there. And like the town council does, and in a way, like the RTM does too. And that doesn't lock everything in, because if there's an update for whatever reason, it's very easy to reconsider. And, because usually most of these things we're voting unanimously on to approve, and if there's something that came out, it'll be very easy to reconsider and reopen the numbers. But it's just, by doing that, it's easier to keep track, like just in even just minutes, actually. And then it's easy to revise that too. So it's a formalism, and it's a familiar formalism within the town that I think is probably quite helpful.
It also goes back to what Jen was saying, that when we do this, let's say we do the staffing piece, so knowing the contracts and what their, increases will be, that would be something that's already kind of set in stone, so you can kind of get through that and be done with it, and then move on to other things that might have a little more, change, or could have more change.
Potentially, although the staffing could go right through everything, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It could be good.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in here. I want to thank Mike for bringing that up. One of the other things that we're looking at as far as like the policy and procedure document was the idea that, the board would basically set a calendar for what they wanted to handle, how they wanted to handle the budget each year. So depending on which sections might have some live changes occurring in them, or ones that are rather fixed, we could move them around, but that would contingent on that with the idea that each budget session would have an articulated list of object codes and functions that would be reviewed that night, barring anything unforeseen. Again, and just, which has been done in the past, some past agendas of the board ed budget sessions, and were, the very detailed list of the function codes that were going to be reviewed that night. However, that did not occur this past session.
Right.
This past review season. So that's something that definitely the committee would talk about a good bit. And again, I think that's more of the policy procedure document that will come up in a more detailed conversation, but that's the direction that we really need, if I'm not speaking out of turn. But that was my understanding of the consensus of the committee, was that we wanted to have something very specific as far as our goals for each budget session, or each opening of the budget session.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Thank you,
Motion to
guys.
adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Who said that? Who said that? Motion to adjourn, there's no discussion after that,
Wait, hold on.
right?
I would just say that, I'm going to go through the notes I've taken here, and our next committee meeting is on the
No
29th.
discussion.
And so I'm going to make some adjustments to the timeline document based on that, and then, so I'll email that out to the whole board just to get feedback, see if I captured some of the sentiments that were relayed tonight.
All right. I want to thank the committee before we adjourn. Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
I made a motion, there's no
Okay.
discussion.
I don't think
after
that
you make
motion carries.
Is there a second?
so
You could
motion
second
to
it.
adjourn.
Yeah. I made the motion already.
Made the motion. Second?
I'm ready to go.
All right, me too.
All right, thank you.
Question?
I'm going to abstain on the adjournment.